What's up guys, it's your boy Fiskitti here. So I've been working on this little project with a friend of mine called Pilgrim's Lotus, and I just wanted to kind of go through some of my art today and introduce you guys to the project. So I have 9 drawings that I have worked on for this storytelling project, 7 of which are of the main character Lucien, and 2 of which are indirectly related that I'll discuss when we get to them. And I'm just gonna kind of go through them and share with you guys some stuff about my process and kind of the development of this project. So before we actually get into the art itself, I want to talk a little bit more about what this project is and the kind of medium that this story is going to be told through. So first and foremost, this is a novel written by my friend who goes by the pen name fjollinfleur, and the idea for the medium is it will be, on one hand, a novel, but then the idea is that, so smooth, you turn it around and it's a comic. And, you know, the, the granted there will be more inspiration from manga than this, but the primary reason that this is modeled after manga or Japanese comics, if you don't know what manga is for the there's such a good word that I can't think of right now. Okay, anyway, the idea is that, you know, each side can be front. So this side can be the front for the novel, and then you can turn it around and it's the front for the comic, but it's still the same, like, physical copy of the book. It's just, you know, depending on which one you want to read first, or want to read just in general, you can flip, and they each have their own front, their own cover. Now, as for the actual story itself, there's an overarching plot following these 2 characters, and also each chapter is kind of primarily focused on this one plot or this one premise, and so each episode will kind of have elements, or sorry, not episode, maybe one of these days an episode of an animated series or actual, like, high quality production film. So smooth, saved it. What was I talking about again? But yeah, so each chapter will kind of contribute to the overall overarching story of these characters, while also primarily focusing on an isolated premise. And so the first kind of short story slash chapter follows our main 2 characters, Lucien and Aslan, and kind of introduces them. And so these 2 vagabond traveling characters are, you know, walking throughout this city of Onde, also known as a Shellin, or I think it may just be a shell. I can't remember. But they're walking throughout this city of Onde on this kind of secret quest. And while it is, I believe, a quest of relatively high import, it is not really supposed to be particularly difficult for someone of their caliber. Until Lucien beheads a captain. And so now the whole, like, guard or whatever is after these 2 figures, and they're, you know, having to try to escape that while still completing this quest, you know, avoiding a danger that has been significantly increased and could have been relatively easily avoided, while also still completing their quest. So that's the kind of premise for this first story, this first chapter of Pilgrim's Lotus. And I would also like to mention that I would like to start kind of a series, or really almost just like a type of video where I kind of do this similar thing and go through some of my art, just not necessarily specifically related to Pilgrim's Lotus, just whatever art I'm doing at the time. So stick around for that if you would like. But anyway, on with the first drawing. And this is the first drawing, you know, that I made of Lucien. And he, the premise started out really interesting, I feel. I had one goal, and that was to blend this idea of, you know, medieval fantasy, like Eastern European, not necessarily Eastern, but like European fantasy, with a character smoking a cigar that looked kind of like a cigarette. Because these, you know, like, you don't think of a cigar or cigarette working in a medieval age, kind of medieval era, fantasy realm. What in the world was that? Bug, go away. That didn't work. Okay, whatever. Which, by the way, I've been rewatching Lord of the Rings with a couple of friends. Great movies. Also, the way Tolkien incorporates, like, smoking pipes into such a like fantasy setting so seamlessly is just, I love it. And it's crazy how well it works together, because, you know, before Tolkien, it's like, who would have thought of, like, smoking pipe tobacco in a fantasy setting? Like, that seems so counterintuitive, I feel. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do with this, is a similar thing of kind of combining these elements that, you know, didn't really seem to fit together on a surface level, but that, you know, if it could be done well, it could actually fit together really nicely in kind of a similar way. And so, you know, like, what's one step further from the, I guess, really technological advancement of pipe smoking, and that's like tobacco smoking, you know, like rolling up a leaf and smoking that. Which, by the way, I swear I didn't plan this. I was looking into trees, you know. I have a tree outside in my yard that I really like, and so I was just kind of looking into that, and so I got a leaf. And so the idea, you know, is just this much, probably less developed, just rolling up of leaf. I don't know if I'm doing this the right direction. It's probably like this. I don't really know. It's about the aesthetic, though, is the point. And so as you roll up the leaf, and a million bajillion times more to it than that, but that's, you know, the idea is that in this kind of era of humanity, if they can do all the other crap they're doing on top of having magic, why can't they think of, you know, aging a leaf for 10 years and rolling it up when they already do that with pipeweed, like in Tolkien's work. And so that's where this whole idea kind of started. And I'll talk a little more about the background here in a minute. This is really the only drawing I have of Lucien that has such a distinct and developed background. But I've been kind of trying to figure out what captures the essence of this character of Lucien so intensely, and kind of analyzing the facial features and whatnot. And I think, you know, the kind of, whatever you want to call it, side kind of mutton chops, not quite, not really chops, but that kind of facial hair like that, I think, is a significant element of what makes him look like the character he is and have that kind of essence. And then also the hair, which, if you'll notice, this ear is way too far up. It looks really strange once you notice it. You're never gonna unsee that now. you know, even with some of the flaws here, there's an essence that I really like about the character, and so I kind of try to capture that in some of the later drawings. And the hair also, I think, is really distinct, and I've been trying to kind of capture that again, and I'll talk a little more about that in some of the later drawings. But there's also, by the way, I love this hand so much. I'm so proud of this hand, dude. Look at that. That is so satisfying. Not... I don't know. I mean, it's a little rigid and, like, stylized, but I feel like it's anatomically accurate enough, honestly. But yeah, I'm so proud of this hand. And then we have these kind of runes. And I initially was like, okay, I'm not gonna develop an entire freaking language for this fictional world. I just want some runes that look cool that I can just replace English letters with and use in my drawings. And that has led, this was in February of 25, I'm recording this in October, and that has led to my little notebook, my little Midori, being very filled up with a lot of notes about linguistics and language and stuff. So that's actually genuinely been really fun. I was not expecting to start developing a language. Of course, with, you know, the help of fjollinfleur. I'm a little more into, like, the runes and the syntax and stuff than the actual words themselves, given that it's not technically my world. But yeah, so I've yet to kind of do a piece with more runes, but there are some runes that I assure you, at least in my eyes, are 10 times cooler than any of these. Well, except for that one. That rune stayed, just slightly altered. But yeah, so one of the things I think too, now that I'm looking at it, that I feel I need to point out is I wanted to kind of balance. I'm probably ranting on a little too much about this one in particular, but I wanted to kind of balance the colors and make it be, like, visible, like you can see it and, like, tell what's going on pretty easily, without, you know, having to strain your eyes, even though the setting is very clearly a dark setting, like it's the middle of the night. And so I kind of had this lantern here. I definitely think, you know, in the future I would like to do some more interesting things with the architecture in the background, and then I don't know, the light kind of, it feels a little too bright, you know, for where it's supposed to be. You know, like, maybe if there were more lantern or, like, street lamps around him, it would make more sense at this time of night, but I don't know, it does feel a little too bright. But, you know, I'm still, in general, proud of the composition and value balance. But moving on to one of the most interesting parts, I think, of this one. We have, of course, the wooden fences, and, you know, all the little details, the rocks and stuff, and the wheel marks in the road. I definitely learned a lot from this one. Definitely did not know what I was doing, as much as I would like. Clearly I knew a good bit of what I was doing, but, you know, like, this is because Augury, the province, the region that this takes place in, is supposed to be a very kind of hilly area with a lot of, you know, like, undulating land, and there's supposed to be a lot of trees, and where there's not trees, it's supposed to be pretty noticeable and have these kind of like pastures, sort of like this, or like it's supposed to pretty apparently be crops. And so I definitely feel like I didn't do particularly well with incorporating those, kind of conveying that kind of feeling. Excuse me, conveying that kind of feeling, that kind of essence through this area. Like, this feels just like this part right here feels a little sloppy, honestly. Like, it does not feel like this particularly, the shape doesn't feel particularly natural, and it definitely does not feel like trees. I do not feel like there's a tree at any point between, like, this area where the path is, roughly where we are looking, you know, in the theoretical camera. I definitely do not feel like I notice any trees between here and the city, aside from this kind of row of supposedly trees back here. And I work a little more on this in, you know, one of my remakes of this city, but that's, you know, this is of course mostly about Lucien, but I did really want to mention this part of the drawing because it is, of course, very significant. I do think that, I don't know, I definitely think there's some development to be had there with just my personal artistic skills. I'm not too fond of the way these stars are, but also, like, I recognize that I got a little choppy knowingly, you know, because this was, at the end of the day, supposed to be a practice piece, to kind of develop some skills and, consider this idea of, you know, the medieval fantasy cigarette. And I think I don't really have any qualms with the sea. I don't think that ship is a little strange, but for the most part, I think all of this is good. The only thing is not necessarily a qualm on the piece, just the accuracy of it. There, I think, should be hills behind here to show kind of how low elevation-wise this city is, and to show that it's in this kind of basin. But also, I don't know if that would really show up at night. And then I'm really proud of this cross-hatching, especially as it relates to the moons. I believe it's Lune and Niven. I think the smaller one is Niven. The name might change for Lune. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, and then this is Onde, of course. I'm actually pretty satisfied with the city of Onde. It was, you know, of course, very, very small, so pretty difficult to work with. I should probably mention, by the way, that all the drawings of Lucien are done traditionally and then edited a little bit in after taking photos of them, just to make them more appropriate and accurate in the digital version. So, like, these rocks, say, would not have been this dark. And also, I could probably get a better photo of this now, but, I mean, I'm satisfied with this, frankly. But, yeah, I don't know. this city definitely, the city definitely, I think, could have some improvements. Like, I definitely didn't need to try to draw out the houses like I did here, but I didn't know that at the time. I wasn't really, hadn't really considered that. Wasn't particularly sure how to go about portraying buildings without directly drawing them like I kind of tried to do here. And also, this is a development that kind of came later in terms of the world. There's supposed to be a giant structure outside the city walls right around here. So that's definitely a consideration. I don't think it makes the drawing less artistically good, but it is missing a piece in terms of the accuracy of it to the story. But yeah, so that general area, pretty proud of, aside from the lack of portraying the trees and stuff. And so after that very long and laborious talk on this first drawing, time to finally move on to the second one. So this is the second drawing I did of Lucien. I did draw more of his body, his kind of like shoulders and stuff, and like the hair, but I cut it out because it was very character inaccurate, I felt, for one, and for two, I just didn't like it. Collarbone and stuff here, frankly, pretty satisfying, like the neck and everything. I've talked to some of my artist friends about this. There's a certain satisfaction with, like, drawing the anatomical details and, like, features of characters, especially, like, the collarbone and stuff like that, and maybe, like, the Adam's apple and stuff. And also, it's, like, it's not... A lot of the time it doesn't really need to be there, and it's probably gonna get covered up anyway because clothes are a thing, believe it or not. But, yeah. I don't know, I thought that was worth pointing out. And then, one of the reasons, too, is, like, the background I didn't think was good. He was supposed to be laying on grass, and I did this kind of texture for the grass right here, and frankly, I'm not very satisfied with that. I think in premise it was pretty good, and I think it was some good practice, but it definitely did not feel, you know, right. And then this definitely, I think, feels like Lucien. It's just that it does, I feel like, have a lot of features and details that feel out of place. Like, the jawline, I think, is way too, square. I definitely think... I definitely think I have a tendency toward making, you know, faces, a little too strange in their shape and proportion. Like, you know, I'm not sure exactly what you call it, but the point kind of right here where the jaw turns, I kind of consider that when I'm drawing from the front or from the side or whatever of the face. And usually when I draw characters, I kind of move this up to, like, here, which is very stylistic and very, anatomically inaccurate, but I don't know, I just... Something in my brain resorts to being like, square jaw like this? No. Nope. That makes him look like... I don't know, who's someone with, like, a square face? Shaquille O'Neal. I don't know. The dude who played the Hulk. Stuff like that. The hair, I think, was... sorry, the... Mutton scruff. Definitely not mutton chops. we can call him Mutton Scruff. The Mutton Scruff, I feel like, adds to the kind of character vibe, as well as I want to say the thick eyelashes are pretty good too. But then the eyes, I feel like, look a little strange in their shape, a little off, but they definitely, I think the thickness of the surrounding kind of eyelashes adds to the overall vibe. And then as for the hair, it's not like, it feels like this is Lucien, but also the hair feels inaccurate. So I don't really know, but there's a certain essence that this is able to capture that I do really appreciate, and it's still not quite where I want it to be. But anyway, that's drawing number 2, Lucien lying down, and then this is drawing number 3. I'm pretty proud of this. If you can't tell, this is a reference, like a direct tribute of the character to an anime that I really, really love called Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop definitely had a significant impact on, I think, some of my art style and aesthetic attraction. Like, I definitely think this, a lot of these drawings feel way more cowboy-esque and kind of like space cowboy-esque, I guess, because of Cowboy Bebop. And, you know, that kind of led me to watch, granted, not a whole lot, but a few cowboy movies, and it's definitely, I think, impacted kind of my style and stuff. This I can definitely tell is Lucien. So, again, it does, I feel like, capture his essence. You know, like, I can tell this is Lucien pretty clearly. I do have a couple qualms. I'm generally really satisfied with this face. There is, however, a very upsetting kind of overall arch here that, you know, or that should be here, that is not, and it was so close, which is part of why it's so upsetting. But, you know, if you look at it compared to the head, it feels very kind of two-dimensional. And so really, I think the nose should be, I want to say up a little more. I can't remember. I knew before. I probably should have wrote it down, but probably a little more like that. And then the lip, the upper lip should go out significantly more, and the lower lip should go out about half that space. So that was very distressing. Well, maybe not distressing, but I'm admittedly rather distraught because of that. And then I kind of got, I think I messed up the pen and also just kind of didn't know what to do. So this is a little sloppy right here, this pen work. And then the hair, I think, is a big thing on this one. The outline of the mutton scruff is, the outline and where it's placed and stuff is good. The texture isn't particularly great. I think I could have done a little better on the texture. Ear is good. And then I want to say this part of the hair is pretty good, but then the rest of it, while it captures, as well as this eyebrow, while it captures the vibe of Lucien, and it makes him recognizable as Lucien, I don't like this hair. I don't think it's character accurate quite like it should be, aside from this part right here. So those are my main qualms with it, with Lucien's face, is, I don't like your face, is that kind of, this outline is way too flat, should be protruding significantly more, to be a little more like three-dimensional. And then the hair outside of these kind of side mutton tails. Not tails. What do you call that? It's not a chop either. Okay, mutton. Oh, but it's not. Mutton tails it is. Like Gollum talking to myself over here. But yeah, this pipe I find really interesting, and I think, I'm not sure, but I definitely think pipes canonically will be far more common than something like cigars or the crimsels, but this pipe is a little... Smoke is pretty good. Pipe feels a little off. I think the shift from the sunset into the dark is a little dramatic in a way that doesn't feel particularly natural. I definitely think, like, this kind of dark graphite right here should be probably about the outer part should probably be about as dark as this darker graphite. And it definitely is very, very abrupt, a very abrupt shift from this kind of lighter graphite to, you know, immediately like a rainbow to this darker graphite, and then the kind of cross hatching, and then the black, which I didn't get the best photo of, but not much to be done about that now. And again, I didn't particularly feel it was worth it. And again, with this kind of area, these hills feel a little barren. I think that maybe these are supposed to actually be grasslands, but even then they still feel a little off, a little odd, a little barren. Then the horizon line is good for the lake, but the lake also has a stark lack of detail and texture. Honestly, my heart wasn't in this one. I didn't put just a whole lot of effort into this in many ways. Also, if you can see, I was eating ramen at one point. I hate this so much, but there's a little spot right there, and it's desaturated from editing the photo. But that's a little splash of ramen, or ramen juice. That's a little splash of ramen juice. That's a little splash of ramen juice, which is really upsetting. And as for this town, it's kind of north of Ondae on the lake. Last I heard, it was called Legedro Lake. But I'll be honest, I forgot about this city. I do think, like, there are some huge elements that are sorely lacking architecturally, but I do think that there are a lot of really interesting elements with this kind of architecture. The shift from this level of detail here on the front to the lack of texture and detail on the roofs, I really dislike. But, you know, whatever, my heart wasn't particularly in this one. I was doing this for a project. I do feel like for a school assignment. I do feel like there is a very satisfying three-dimensional aspect to this. Like, it really does feel like, oh, this is topographically, this is like we are at a higher elevation, and then kind of past these houses right here, if you look through here, it feels like it kind of drops off. and I really, really like that. That is kind of, now that I'm looking at it, that does kind of not it it's only really on this side of the neck of Lucien. Like if we go over here, something's not quite lining up. Like it doesn't seem like it seems like it drops off over here once you get far enough away, but then not over here on the left. And so that I think isn't great. I think it could be redeemed by adding a little more detail here. But again, at this point, not worth it. These houses, ironically, I think these houses right here have the most personality, which I really like. Because these are the ones I kind of slopped out on. And then the trees I also feel like are a little stiff, little lacking in personality and uniqueness. That I really like. This tree, this house, this hut also feels a little stiff. This house I really, really like. The detail on this I think is great. The kind of like scaly roof I think is really interesting. And then this kind of gets a little more two-dimensional again, but still pretty good. But yeah, this roof I think is great. I think the smoke has some issues with the texture. In general. This tree and these roofs I think have a lot of personality. I really like those. And then these trees and this kind of area, some of that architecture, that all has a little bit of personality. I think it could still be better and use some improvement, but I do still generally, you know, I think that's better than the little scribbles I did for the roof texture here. And then this detail, of course, I think compositionally there are some issues here. Design-wise, I think the buildings, the structures are thorough enough, interesting enough, but compositionally the kind of value, you know, the grays, it's too dark and there's too much going on here. There's too much noise, I feel like, you know? And the value, having better shading in certain areas, I think could definitely help that. But overall, definitely, you know, definitely improving, definitely good that I drew this. And of course, still very, very lacking in plenty of departments. I think it was a good step in developing the character of Lucien. So yeah. And then this, actually I have a close-up of the head as well. This is a drawing I never finished and honestly probably won't. I did some stuff trying to kind of develop this cross that he's wearing. It is raining so loud out there. Love it. But yeah, there's not a whole lot that's super unique here, given how unfinished it is. But there is something in his hair shape and his face that I really, really like, that I've tried to capture recently. And I think the eyes and the facial outline, the shape is so interesting and very, I think, character accurate. And so this is something I've been looking at and trying to replicate, because, you know, the eye outline from the side I think is very character accurate. it's very difficult to be like, okay, this captures this character's essence almost to a T, and then to be like, okay, turn it 90 degrees, because it's a two-dimensional piece. It's like, it's very difficult to take this and do a, like, front view, which I believe, we haven't, okay, yeah, no, there's been one view from the front so far, but not the best. But yeah, so I think this, the hair captured his essence really well, and the face outline and like structure captures his essence really well, and this is something I've been trying to kind of replicate. Especially from the front view, which is where it's the most difficult. And the hair is probably the most difficult part. This has a lack of detail in the center that I think is really significant, that that a friend pointed out to me, that I've been considering, because it kind of gives you the shape of the head without giving you too much detail. And so I've been kind of looking into that in drawings, kind of exploring that concept in drawings that I don't think are in this album. But that brings us to our next drawing. This is probably the first drawing of Lucien that I felt like really proud of for what Lucien was. The first one I was really proud of, but Lucien, I think, had some issues, of course, and like this is the first one that I feel like really captured his essence from the front view. And honestly, I feel like this is the first one that really captured his essence well in general. The only issue, the only thing, the only major thing I'm looking into trying to fix is the hair. Talking about that, you know, like this is, which is more stylistic. Like this is very rigid and has a lot of sharp lines, and everything is kind of defined. That's, I think, one of the big things. And so recently I've been trying to find this balance of, okay, define the shape of the hair, you know, outline it, and then maybe have a little more detail toward the end of the hair, kind of where it kind of meets his face, but then leave a lot to just kind of be up for the imagination, you know? And then I think, I don't know, I love this expression. You can tell how just stoically angry he is. Just like irritable. And I love it. It is very, very stylized too, which I really like. Feels very unique. I've got a lot of people saying that this reminds them of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Unfortunately, I still haven't watched that yet, but I definitely see the aesthetic similarities. I think I do have some minor, I want to say, qualms with the face outline. I think it's good, but at the same time, I think it could be a little boxier. And then love the lips and the nose in general. I think I really like. I think with this shading, maybe to make it feel a little more three-dimensional, there's a better word, but to make it feel like it's a little more defined, there we go. I think I could do exactly that, define a little more. I don't think the shadows here need to be outward of the nostril on kind of the bottom, kind of here. And then this maybe could be a little thinner and maybe even moved inward a little bit. But that, I think on the whole, is good. Neck maybe could use some work. I really, really like this shirt, the turtleneck. Feels very interesting and stylized, and I love the blend of the rigidity with the curvatures. as well as this cloak. It gets in this bottom corner. It gets a little rough, but I really like kind of the way you can get a sense of the shape with some of the graphite work here. So I'm really proud of that. The neck feels a little, I think I just said that. Neck feels a little odd. The eyes, I think, are probably the most off about this. The eyebrows are really good, but the eyes themselves, I think, are a little off. And then the ear also, I think, is a little off, but still pretty good. Specifically at the top, it feels like it points outward a little too much. And maybe even feels like it's turned to the side, like kind of mixed perspectives. I gotta piss so bad. But yeah, I think for the most part, this is the most character accurate of the ones up to this point. The only things that I think significantly need attention, are the kind of hairstyle and the eyes, and maybe the kind of face outline, the jaw outline. But otherwise, I think this is very character accurate and a good drawing. Now, this is probably the drawing I would say I'm most proud of. You know, like, to me, this just screams Lucien. Like, this is just definitively Lucien to me. I feel as though, you know, like, the eyes don't quite feel, they feel good here. I don't feel like the eyes quite would work in, like, face down, like, from the fully from the front. And then the head kind of feels a little wide. I'm not sure, but I love this so much because it just so intensely screams Lucien to me. And this is, out of all the ones I've shown so far, this is probably my favorite. I am seeing some things that could be fixed with the detail, and I think the biggest thing is, you know, the hair. The hair, of course, screams Lucien. I just think, you know, stylistically, I would like to kind of explore going back to that kind of lack of detail with kind of the bulk of the hair. Like, it feels a little too detailed, a little too defined. Kind of let the imagination kind of take over. And then the eyes could be in a less, you know, angry setting, with a less angry expression. I definitely think the eyes could take some sort of slightly different shape, slightly altered shape, but this just, the essence of this is just wholly and totally Lucien to me, and I love that, and I'm, you know, trying to replicate that. So this is the last drawing of Lucien. I definitely have some qualms with this one. I think it does, for the most part, capture the essence of Lucien. My only, I think, there are, I think, 3 major issues I take with this, in terms of how character accurate it feels, and how much it feels like it actually represents the character of Lucien. I think that the mouth, the jaw should be lowered, the mouth should be opened significantly more to, like, really portray the agony in this scene. I do think the emotion is very explicitly and beautifully portrayed. You can tell that he's like in anguish, I feel. You can, you know, just there's this immediate kind of sensation of how much anguish in this moment this character is in. Again, the only thing is that kind of the mouth being open a little bit more, but I think, you know, this shape definitely feels like Lucien. This side profile, the shape of his face and his eyes and everything. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the ear is a little off. The hair, I definitely think could use some work. Definitely feels like Lucien. Like I can tell it's Lucien. I still think the hair has some issues that, you know, I would like to kind of try to address. Definitely way too much detail, way too much noise going on in the hair. And then the last thing, the third thing that I take issue with is the shoulders. He is supposed to be kind of like, once again, there's some better words for this, but he is supposed to be pretty frail, pretty like meager, underfed, you know, small shoulders and stuff. But it does still it does still feel like his shoulders in particular are too small. I think I like kind of how his collarbone and stuff is defined. I didn't do a whole lot of detail down here, like around the edges, mostly because of, you know, this also supposed to be practice drawing, or a practice piece. But yeah, I definitely think this. I definitely think with changing those three things, this would, you know, capture the essence of Lucien super well, super well. So this drawing isn't really this drawing isn't really Lucien. So this is the first of the drawings that aren't directly related, but I definitely think this has had some impact on my kind of development of this character. Like, if you think back to the first one of him laying on the grass, he has, you know, this kind of hair. This is also significantly more stylized, of course. And this is also, as well as the last one, are both digital, unlike all of the other ones. All the other ones are traditional. Honestly, I don't have a whole lot to say on this one. I just, you know, I think the hair definitely played some impact on kind of developing Lucien. And then, of course, the turtleneck transferred over. I don't know what it is with me and turtlenecks. And then this texture, I gotta admit, I got these textures offline. Like, I just Googled some stuff. One of these I got, or most of these, aside from the texture in the hair, I got from Berserk and just did a bunch of editing guru magic and layered them on top of each other and put it underneath the line work for shading and stuff. I don't know how to make screen tones. I'm gonna have to look into that, because if I get more into digital, or if it's maybe like, I don't know, maybe you just use other screen tones. I don't know how much it matters, but anyway, this I definitely think carried some weight in this character. And this character is pretty underdeveloped as a character, both in my art and in the like writing and the story. It's my own story that I'm considering, but you know, this guy hasn't seen a whole lot of development, and I definitely think some of his essence could have been transferred over to Lucien. because he's so underdeveloped and because they have kind of a similar aura, similar essence, a similar character feel. But yeah, so that's that one. Don't have a whole lot to say on that one. Now this one, definitely, you know, like I was mentioning earlier, there are some very, very kind of cowboy things, kind of cowboy aesthetics that I really started to get into that felt very kind of Lucien-like, feel very suitable to this setting. And it's really kind of led to me exploring some ideas with incorporating kind of Western American cowboy type aesthetics into the fantasy elements. And you'll see in the story actually that this bag, when I drew this, I had no idea what this smoke was supposed to be. I was just like, I don't know. I may have made a mistake with the pin work and been like, huh, got to do something with it now, or something like that. But it ended up, the idea being that this little pouch has some sort of powder, and it's magical, and the smoke is kind of coming up out of the bag. And that, you'll see later, plays pretty significantly into Lucien's character and into the first short story. So that specifically, I think is a really neat tie-in. Also, I'm just really proud of this drawing. I still haven't posted it anywhere. I really need to post this to Instagram. But that bag and just the general aesthetic, the general vibe, as well as the mutton chops, I think. Although we know that Lucien, of course, has mutton scruff, not mutton chops. But, you know, I definitely think there's some correlation there that maybe I didn't super intentionally make, but is definitely probably on a subconscious level was definitely there. Definitely some correlation, some ties in there. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. This project is still very early in development, so, you know, I don't know. But maybe if it gets some more traction, we can speed up the process. Also, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much, because I was rambling on like a crap ton. But yeah, consider liking and subscribing if you'd like to help if you'd like to help a poor artist guy out. It is like 3:30 in the morning. So, you know, I'm gonna not go to sleep. Yeah. Stay righteous, stay safe. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you in the next one. Johnny! She is like a giraffe!